We're talking about how can we be different? What is it that we can do that nobody else can do? And what we did is we actually asked our owners, when you have a Subaru, what do you think about it? Oh, I love it. Oh, it does this. I love it. I love it. I love it. And that's how the whole idea of
That's the audience.
They told us that they love their Subaru. They loved its reliability. They loved its durability. They loved the fuel economy. They loved the utility. They loved everything about it. So that was the whole genesis of the idea of the Love campaign.
Today, I'm thrilled to chat with Tom Dole, the former CEO of Subaru of America. After a remarkable 2-decade career steering the Japanese automaker's growth in the US, we dive into his journey as CEO and how he transformed Subaru from a niche brand into a beloved cult.
A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: Dealer DMV, Open Lane, and Car Dealership Guy News. And now let's get into the show.
Tom Dole on the CDG podcast. Tom, welcome.
Yoshi, good to see you.
Good to have you here.
It's so great to finally meet the real car dealership guy.
My man, and a loyal follower. So
absolutely,
gotta love it. And this is a new type of episode because I have Alan here as well, Alan Haig, as a guest co-host. So we're really pumped about this.
It's always great being with Alan, I'll tell you.
It's going to be a great conversation. Wow, where to start? I have to tell you a story. We've been talking for 20 minutes already. But I actually interviewed at Subaru of America.
You did?
I did.
When was this?
This was in probably like 2013 or something.
Really?
Yeah. So you weren't CEO yet. I checked your LinkedIn to make sure that.
I was president though.
You were president.
Yeah.
But this is going to sound crazy, but Subaru was actually the reason I stuck to auto retail.
No kidding.
I swear.
You got to tell me the story. What happened?
So here's the story. So I walk in first. I remember this very vividly because it was such a monumental point in my career. I walked in and you had this like front desk, and
right.
you make a left. There's all these like, open space, and then you make another left. There's a conference room where I guess you do interviews.
Right.
And
that's right.
It was a really compelling opportunity. I was college at the time. And I remember, and this is going to sound crazy, the interviewer, he asked me at the end, he's like, not the end, in the middle, he's like, so what do you currently do? Now, I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, I'm the chief operating officer. And again, it's like a little car lot. and he looks at me funny. He's like, what? But in my head, I was doing all these things,
sure.
At the car lot. I was doing everything. I was, ops, buying this, sales, F&I.
About that.
So long story short, they ended up offering the opportunity and it was like an internship or something, but it was some entry level position. But I took it. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I'm already doing X, Y, and Z. And I was like, maybe, going corporate, it's not for me. Maybe I'm going to stick to retail. And that was, I swear to you, that was the day. I remember walking to my car, calling my dad. I'm like, I think I'm going to stick to this auto retail thing.
Well, I hope we didn't shoo you away.
Hey, we're here right now. No. By the way, it was a great experience.
Yeah. What was it, a marketing job or what was it? Remember?
Marketing role. So
yeah, well, we hire a lot of interns for marketing for sure.
Well, that's yeah. So I mean, so anyways, that's a story I had to tell you, and I was holding it in when we're talking. About it. I was holding it in. I was like, I got to tell you, but we'll wait for the podcast.
Small world, isn't it?
So you have a part in the success of what we're doing here today. All right, so
you should ask for stock, Tom.
I probably should, huh?
Finder's fee.
So less about me, more about you. 39 years and 8 months. Why didn't you stick around for another 4 months? Could have hit 40 at Subaru.
Well, it was time. At a Japanese car company, your contract goes till March 31st. Mm-hmm. So technically March 31st of 2023, my contract that expired.
So there's a good reason.
There's a good reason. But the company they kept me on as an advisor position through the end of the year. So that's kind of how that whole thing ended up. But yeah.
So you started at Subaru of America in accounting,
yes.
Right? In a very, numbers-driven roles. Worked your way up all the way to CEO for literally almost 40 years. Give us just a little bit of your story. What was that like, right? Take us through your journey.
Well, before I came to Subaru, I came to Subaru, I know the exact date, March 15th, 1982. 1982.
Got it.
1982. So you can figure out, I've been there a long time. Now, for 5 years before that, I graduated from Villanova, so I'm a local kid. I graduated from Villanova, worked in an accounting firm, Arthur Young and Company, for 5 years. And then that's when I left to come to Subaru in 1982. And what happened at the time, Subaru was a public company and it was just starting now to become more professionalized. It was growing. It was probably at the time one of the few companies in the Philadelphia area that was really growing well. And so they needed to kind of professionalize their operations. So I came in and my job title was manager of operations, operating procedures. So my job was to essentially document all of the operating procedures that the company had for cash receipts and inventory, accounts payable. And so it gave me a great opportunity to see the company from the top level down. So I knew pretty well what the operations of the company were back in the time. And that's kind of how I started, and kind of worked my way up, various jobs, went down to Delaware. We had a Delaware holding company at one time, did some treasury work, then ultimately went back into the accounting department to become an accounting director. And then one thing kind of led to another. And over time, I guess if you stay around long enough, right, you get these roles.
What was Subaru perceived, 40 years ago, right? What was the OEM market like, generally speaking, right? Were you an underdog? Was it considered something realistic for some, a new automaker to kind of emerge as a leader? I mean, if you look today, where brand loyalty is, I want to say at all-time lows, if not all-time lows, multi-decade lows, right? It's actually a pretty good time to be a new brand in our market, at least how I see it. And I'd love to get your perspective, because you can actually get into the market, right?
Yeah.
After what we went through, the COVID boom, and, with supply being so low, people had no choice but to explore other brands. So what was it like when you started? And, Subaru, what was the market like, and the ability for you to kind of grow as a brand?
It was interesting because I came in 1982. The company was started in 1968. And I would say during the late 60s and early part of the 70s, the company almost went out of business because we were selling a car called the 360 at the time. Mm-hmm. And Ralph Nader had rated it unsafe. So the company struggled. And what saved the company was the first Arab oil embargo in 1974, I believe it was. And after that, the fuel efficiency of Japanese cars, obviously, with gas prices being what they were at the time, created this huge demand for not just Subaru, but Toyota, Honda. That's when Nissan, that's when the Japanese really got a foothold into the U.S. market in a big way. And then through the mid 70s and the late 70s and through the early part of the 80s, the company was growing like crazy. So when I get there in 1982, the company's selling about 150,000 vehicles a year, mm-hmm. but we're subject to what was called the voluntary restraint agreement. There was an agreement between the United States and Japan to limit the amount of cars that we could bring into the United States, because we were a pure importer at that time. But the market opportunity then was unbelievable. The company, because of how it started, it really wasn't professionally managed. Remember, the company was started by two gentlemen, Harvey Lamb and Malcolm Bricklin. Mm-hmm. And essentially what they really wanted to sell was a motor scooter, this Rabbit motor scooter that they happened to see when they were visiting Japan. And as a result of that, they really weren't interested in the car business per se, but mm-hmm. the Japanese wanted them to sell the Subaru instead of the Rabbit motor scooter. And that's kind of how the whole company started. But it was tremendously successful when I got there in the early part of the 80s. And it really stayed that way up until about 1986 or 1987. And then we went into a little bit of a slide, which we can talk about.
Anyone that thinks of Subaru, they think, I've tweeted about this sort of tongue in cheek, but you think of how have you been able to achieve such crazy market penetration in Pacific Northwest, in New England? Like, Subaru knows its customer very, very well. And like I said, the market penetration is so deep within specific segments of audiences. Was that something that was deliberately done by the company? And if so, like, how was that done? How have you been able to achieve such success within specific markets?
Really good question. Originally, when I got to the company in 1982, we were a niche brand. Mm-hmm. So essentially, the strong markets for us were the Northeast, like, Washington, D.C. on north, mm-hmm. Pacific Northwest, bigger Southern, San Francisco up to Seattle, and of course, the Rocky Mountain states. Mm-hmm. Everywhere else, probably never heard of Subaru. Mm-hmm. We had retailers in various parts of the country, but they really weren't selling any type of volume. We really knew by the time we get to the late 80s and early part of the 1990s, we know we have to grow, right? You can't be at 150,000 vehicles a year. Your market share, even at the time, I think the car market was 11 or 14 million vehicles in that sales range. We were too small. So we had to be able to grow. We had to be able to entice retailer operators to be able to take our brand on. Mm-hmm. And the only way they can do that is if they're selling some meaningful volume. When you're only selling 180,000 vehicles, 150,000 vehicles, our sales were based on the number of retailers, we had 300 to 330 per store. Mm-hmm. You can't generate the earnings or cash flow that's necessary to be able to support a franchise in the way that we needed it to be supported. So it was intentional. From the early part of the 2000s forward, for us to first get to 250,000 vehicles, then from 250,000 grow to 350,000 to 500 to 600 to 700. Mm-hmm. Now, I think we would have done a lot better than the 700,000. We peaked in 2019, but that was because of COVID. My personal goal was to get to a 5% market share or somewhere between 800 and 850,000 vehicles before I retired. But now leaving that to the next generation of management, they're going to be able to, they're going to take over that responsibility. But the fact of the matter is the franchise is in good shape right now. And to your point, people know what
it's in very good shape.
Very good shape. People know what Subaru stands for. From the marketing through the experience that our customers get when they visit a Subaru retailer, it's all there for them. So we really have our retailers and all of us really at the company that work so hard to put us into this position.
I want to dig one level deeper into the marketing here because I love marketing and it's really interests me. So it was a deliberate decision. I understand that now. And it's clearly a successful decision, right? But can you give us a little bit more behind the scenes of the marketing strategy? I just think it's so tough to break into the automotive market. It's such a saturated market. There's so many players. And again, you go to my father was in Vermont like a month ago. And he's a car guy. Like,
he's going
to look at cars, and he's like Yossi. He's like, you don't understand. He's like, every car is a Subaru.
Just about.
He's never been there, and I haven't been there either. But I was like, it's incredible. So it just got me thinking, like, what was it? Just the marketing messaging? Was there not? Was it coupled with the features in the vehicle? Was it the simplicity of the vehicle? Like, what was it that allowed you to achieve such intense? Such a win within your, specific regions of the country?
The car has always been very well received in the colder climates, if you will, because of its all-wheel drive capabilities, right? So that was never really an issue. Really what the issue was for us was really name recognition. We had to get our name out there to make people want to consider to purchase a Subaru vehicle. And so what do we do? I come along in 2006 where I get this job as the CEO or COO at the time. Executive Vice President, COO over the company. And we're sitting around with the marketing gentleman by the name of Tim Mahoney at the time. And we're talking about how can we be different? What is it that we can do that nobody else can do? And what we did is we actually asked our owners, what do you think? When you have a Subaru, what do you think about it? And, oh, I love it. Oh, it does this. I love it. I love it. I love it. And that's how the whole idea of the love.
The audience.
They told us that they love their Subaru. They loved its reliability. They loved its durability. They loved the fuel economy. They loved the utility. They loved everything about it. So that was the whole genesis of the idea of the love campaign. Now, to be very honest with you, it's very difficult to own an emotion, right? I remember when we first came out with this idea of love, it's what makes Subaru a Subaru, right? People doubted it. I had people would come up to us at the, New York Auto Show or the Detroit Auto Show at the time. And they would say, you guys are crazy. There's no way you can brand an emotion like that. But we had nothing to lose. Remember, in 2005, 2006, we're on hard times. We're trying to figure out how we can grow this thing because otherwise there might not be a franchise. So we're trying to figure out what can we do to be different. And so we tried the love thing. We figured if it didn't work, we would go back.
And what was the love thing? Because I Googled Subaru love and there's a lot of different things that came up.
Well, we always had the moniker, it's what makes Subaru Subaru. So it could be all-wheel drive, make Subaru Subaru. And what we did is we put love in front of it. Love is what makes Subaru Subaru. And then we had a genius idea in 2008 that if we're going to do this love, we're going to advertise love. We want the whole brand to be considered love, right? So that's when we came up with the idea of Share the Love, where we took 5 national charities at the time. And we decided at the end of the year when everybody's advertising low monthly payments or how cheap they can get the car for with incentives and so forth, we said to ourselves, what if we took $250,000 out of our incentive budget and put it towards this love campaign? And we're going to donate the money, let the customers decide when they come in to purchase a car, how they want to divide that money up. They could put all $250 to one particular charity. They could put it to 5 different charities by splitting it. They could decide.
And what was the results of that?
Results were fantastic. And that's what was the genesis for it. And then ultimately over time, we started to add what we call the Love Promise activations, where now there's every other month, there's something going on at Subaru. So we have Subaru Loves to Care in February. Subaru Loves the Environment in April. Subaru Loves to Help in like June. Subaru Loves to Learn in August, the month we're in now. Then Subaru Loves Pets. And then at the end of the year, of course, we have Subaru Share the Love.
This episode is brought to you by Dealer DMV. In today's climate, you probably find your dealership selling more and more vehicles out of state.
More sales, always a good thing, but then comes time to title and register, and everyone knows out-of-state titling is a major headache. It doesn't have to be this way. Our friends at Dealer DMV have created a program called Dealer 50, a revolutionary approach to 50-state titling. With Dealer 50, your dealership now has 24/7 portal access to calculations, pre-filled forms, checklists, inquiries, plus white glove processing and specialist support. You can even acquire duplicate titles in all 50 states directly through the Dealer 50 platform. And the best part, it's DMS integrated. Visit dealer50.com, that's DLR50.com to learn more about this game-changing solution from Dealer DMV, or click the link in the show notes below. So I want to ask you a fun question about this.
Yeah.
Do you consider Subaru a marketing company or a manufacturing company, or neither? Or a retailing? I mean, what do you consider Subaru? Because it's like, this is so slick from a marketing perspective. You kind of paved your own path.
Well, we have to be both, right? I mean, we have to we have to understand. Here's the product that we have, and this is what it is we have to sell. But now, how can we make this how can we make it appealing to our customers that are out there? Not just to our customers, but we needed to grow the pie. You know, we went from literally 1% market share to over 4% market share.
Wow.
Right. I mean, and this is an industry where people fight for 1/10 of a share of market share every year. And we're picking up tons of market share every year, from particularly once you got past the earthquake and tsunami year in 2011. I think during that period of time, we were probably growing like 15-17% compound annual growth rate all the way up through 2019. So it's a combination of both, but you need the product in order to be able to support the marketing positioning.
I'm going to propose another element to your success.
Okay.
So about a year and a half ago, you and I were at NADA, and I invited you to join me on stage at the Auto Team America conference. And we talked about Subaru, your success, some of the same topics about marketing, engineering, et cetera. And I joked a little bit. I mean, the Subaru to me it's not going to win many designs for beauty. It's not going to be in a Hall of Fame next to Ferrari. So there was another element of your success, which I really feel was evident in that after you spoke for an hour and a half or so, when you got up to leave the stage, do you remember what happened?
I do remember that. I'll be honest with you, Alan, it was really emotional when that happened, because as Alan is ending the Q&A and I'm standing up, I received a standing ovation from the people in the crowd.
Wow.
So 300, 400, though, 300 retailers, probably another 100 people like me in the audience. So over 400 people standing and applauding what Tom and Subaru had accomplished. These are retailers. Now, I only know of one other person in auto retail I've seen get a standing applause, and that's Jack Hollis from Toyota. Because I think both of you all share something in common, which is a partnership. Well, I should let you describe it. How do you view your retailers?
Right. Well, that's a great question, Alan, because I view them as retailers, not dealers.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference in your mind?
There's a big difference. You know, to me, a retailer is somebody who's actually retailing and showing the product in a professional manner. Somebody who's dealing, let's go make a deal. Okay. It's to me, a dealer's
about the price then.
It becomes all about the price and how cheap you can get it for. Retailing, you're taking something and you're making it, you're making it beautiful.
You're adding value to a product.
You're adding value to the process. And that's actually a really good point, because we focused a lot, not just on our deals. I mean, when you think about this business, it really does get back to the customer, right? Everything that we do at the manufacturer level, the marketing level, and the retailer level is all about the customer. So when you work back from the customer, okay, if the customer is the most important thing, which they are, okay, we need the retailers to make sure that they understand that customer is the most important thing. How are they going to build their organization to support that? How are we at Subaru of America going to build our organization to support the retailers? Because believe me when I tell you, and one time I said this to our Japanese executives when I was in Japan one time. I think it was 2014, the year that we went over 500,000 vehicles for the first time. And we're in Japan and we're doing all this compying and so forth. And it finally struck me, because the Japanese executive, Mr. Yoshinaga at the time, was saying, we sold 500,000 cars in the U.S. market. Unbelievable accomplishment. We sold 500,000 cars. I said, no, Yoshinaga-san, we didn't sell anything. What do you mean we didn't sell anything? No, the retailers sold those cars. We didn't sell them. They did.
Yeah.
So it really was through their effort. And when you look at the business from that perspective and you work it backwards, now you have to be in partnership. The retailers have to know what our strategy to go to the market is all about. They have to embrace it. And not only that, it makes them feel good because they want to come in. They want to make the customers happy. They want to do right by their local communities. They want to contribute.
I think another part of the success too, along with the branding and the product, was the business model that you helped to establish for your retailers. And I remember the first time that I was involved in selling a Subaru dealership, I was excited to get the financials, look into the average gross profits per vehicle. Not that impressive. It was pretty low. I think at the time it was like $1,300. And, but the bottom line was pretty solid. And it was more than the Audi store next door, more than the Volkswagen store, a little bit less than the Mercedes store. This is a group of stores outside of Baltimore. And I was digging into, well, how do they make the bottom line like that if they don't have much front end gross? And it was from all the little areas, like because you don't have a big supply sitting on the lot,
right?
Floor plan expense is low. Because the marketing is doing a good job bringing those customers to you, advertising expenses are low. Because the throughput per salespeople was pretty high because they didn't have to sell the customer, right? They were able to really show the benefits and features and then the value with the price.
That's right.
They could sell more units per salesperson than other stores. There was less turnover. So there was less training expense. And there was a kind of a
Super interesting.
Virtuous circle created within the dealership, partly because of there wasn't an oversupply. There was no push going on. I should really shut up and let you tell.
Well, no, you're doing a great job.
Well, it seems like it's like a leaner cost structure because he said something earlier where people were putting dollars towards charity instead of incentives, which to me signals a consumer that maybe has more disposable income is like a little less price sensitive.
That's exactly right.
But it doesn't mean they're not a savvy consumer. They're just very deliberate about how they want to allocate their money.
You're exactly right. In fact, the Subaru customer can afford to buy anything. But that was all purposefully done that way, right? Because we knew, based on where we were positioned in the market at that time, we weren't able to go to the market above certain price points. So that meant the retailer margin was what it was going to be. But by keeping the inventory turns high, by helping them and assisting them with advertising and marketing support, which is what we did. These are the types of things where they could pick up a little bit of extra gross profit here or there, making them more efficient. We were one of the first, I think I'm very proud of it. I think of all the manufacturers that really embraced leads and lead management and understanding as these leads were coming in, these are real people that are interested to buy a car. Mm-hmm. Okay, we got to get them in here and watch. And so that was another aspect that allowed traffic to blossom and allowed us to expand our operations. But yeah, it was all great stuff. It still is.
So how did you develop this perspective about wanting the retailers to win? That it wasn't you trying to take margin away from them or you trying to go around them. You were really viewing, ultimately, the retailer was your customer.
That's right.
How did you come up with that? Because that's not common in our industry.
Well, here's how I came up with it. Back around 2003, 2004, we came out with, I remember correctly, a signature facility program that we wanted the retailers. We wanted to upgrade the look of our stores. And we thought we were deserving of it. But of course, at the time, we're only selling about 180,000 vehicles a year. Average retailers.
Put that in perspective. Yeah.
Average retailers we had about a little over 600 retailers at the time. So that means the average retailer is only selling 330, 350 cars a year.
Not enough.
Clearly not enough.
Put that in perspective for the audience listening.
So for the audience listening, what that means, if the average retailer is selling, say, 350 cars, your top retailers are probably selling 700 to 750. But remember the average is bought up by the people that are selling more. The median retailer, so exactly half of the retailer network, was probably selling 200, 275, 250. There's not enough money. They're not making any money.
When you say 275, you're referring to new units. New and used per month.
New
only.
New only. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's not enough earnings and cash flow for them to build this facility that we're asking them to do.
And there's not enough for them to attract and retain top talent.
Yeah, right? They can't. Right. Our franchise was a feeder for the Toyota store, the Honda store that they might have.
You can't have the best locations.
Right.
You're down the street in a smaller, subpar location.
Right. So what we tried to do then was to figure out, okay, how can we work with the retailers to get more marketing and advertising dollars back to them so that we could at first increase the volume. And at the time we had a co-op program like everybody did, but the co-op program was basically designed around the top retailers. Not everybody was getting their fair share, or at least I thought anyway. Some people might have a different perspective, but I didn't think the retailers were getting their fair share. So we came up with what we called a unique advertising co-op marketing system that we called the Subaru Ad Fund to help the retailers, right, with their marketing advertising to draw people in. And what was interesting, as we were turning it around in 2007, 2008, 2009, that was the financial crisis years. But because we had implemented the marketing and advertising, which made it more egalitarian based on what the retailers were purchasing from us, the wholesale sales that we were selling to the retailers, right? They were getting advertising and marketing dollars in that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise, that they could put into the market. So that's why during the financial crisis years, we were just growing right through it. And people would come up to us and say, well, how are you guys doing this? Well, that's kind of how it started. But we needed to make sure that the retailers were making an adequate enough return on investment. It all gets down to that return.
Say that again.
Say a return on investment.
That was an important part of your strategy.
Yeah.
That the retailers had to have an adequate return on investment, or else they wouldn't invest in the franchise. They
Exactly.
wouldn't move to that location. They wouldn't hire the best talent.
Exactly. And now we need it. We need that, continue to need that, because we're going to want our retailers to do the next generation signature facility. We're going to want them to invest in talent and systems and so forth that are going to be necessary to take our franchise, because we want to be successful in the future with this transition EV or whatever it turns out to be in the future. We want to be successful. So we need our retailers invested in it. And you can't get the retailer interest if you're just a collector brand, which is kind of what we were.
This episode was brought to you by OpenLane, the leading online dealer marketplace for used cars. OpenLane brings you exclusive inventory, simple transactions, and better outcomes, all with the lowest fees in the industry. Dealers love OpenLane because they can find a vast selection of off-lease exclusive vehicles, rental, dealer trades, and more, all combined with a truly transparent process, best-in-class inspections, and easy-to-read condition reports, allowing buyers to bid with confidence. If you're new to OpenLane, you can sign up now and receive a $350 buy fee credit. Learn more at openlane.com or click the link in the show notes below.
Mike Jackson, who was CEO at AutoNation for a long time, had a phrase that there's a battle for talent and capital at auto retail. Why do you think that other manufacturers don't view the retailer as a partner? Why do you think they view them a little bit as almost in the way between them and their and the true vehicle owner? Why don't they adopt that win-win mentality with their retail body?
It seems like it's better for the consumer when the manufacturer is, not butting heads with the retailer, right? It's almost obvious. It should be obvious. I guess it's not for everyone, but it seems like it just makes a better customer experience, right? So I understand Alan's question, which is like, what leads other potential automakers to not go in that direction? And, from as simple as maybe not being supportive to the dealer, or as extreme as looking to disintermediate the dealer, right? Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Well, it is a really good question. And Alan's going to have to ask.
That's why we ask it, baby.
Alan's going to have to ask those other brands that in the back of it. But if you look at the brands that have great relationships with the retailers, and you can look at the JD Power, the NADA attitude survey, for example. It's Subaru, Toyota, and Lexus, Honda at the top. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Right. Now we can't do here. One retailer actually said this to me one time. We were arguing over something. I don't remember what it was. He said, listen, we know as a retail organization, we can't do everything that you ask us to do. And we also know you can't do everything that we ask you to do. But by having this give and take, you can kind of create that. You're from Philadelphia. So there's a guy named Sonny Hill who has a radio show around here, Alan, called The Living Room. So I adopted The Living Room. We want to make a living room conversation, just like we're having here today with our retailers. So when our retailer advisory board came in, or we went out to regional meetings and met with them, we said, this is the living room. Tell us what's on your mind. What can we do? And then we would take notes and we would decide, hey, if we can do this, let's go back and do it. Try to meet the retailers where they were. Because again, we want their attitude to be correct. Because remember, it's all, as I said earlier, what's the goal of our business? Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, it's to get a loyal customer. We want customer loyalty. We want customer retention. If we can keep our customer retention and loyalty high, then we don't have to worry about conquesting as much. the customers will see the value that we're providing and the retailers are providing. That's why it's great when you go into a Subaru retailer and the salesperson's been there for 15, 20 years. That customer has now been through 3 or 4 car buying cycles with that customer.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that customer. There's a relationship there. And this business, it really is all about the relationship. And so that's really the key. Fundamentally, it's about creating a loyal customer. And if we can create the loyal customer, but we can't do it ourselves, we have to have the retailer.
You're creating a loyal customer because you show the retailer that you care about their success.
They're loyal to us.
Yes. They're willing to write that check, to spend their time, to spend time in the community, to invest now for a better future because they have confidence that your way is a good way.
Yeah.
So
it's not always about dollars and cents, right? Once you get to be a certain amount, we have an obligation to help our local communities to become better places. That's why we try to say to our retailers, it's more than about selling a car. Anybody can sell a car. Mm-hmm. There's 32 brands out there, maybe more manufacturers that are out there that want to sell somebody a car. But not every one of them wants a relationship with the customer. And that's where we come in. We want that relationship with that customer. And that's why we always say, you're more than a typical car dealer. You're a Subaru retailer.
This
concept of more is very important.
Yeah. And I want to dig in one level deeper into the customer.
Yeah.
Because we've been talking a lot about the retailer and what it's like being a Subaru retailer. Talk to me about, you were at Subaru up until very recently, right? And so you've seen this evolution of consumer preferences. I have this funny post that I posted on Twitter a couple months ago and it went viral, which was people all people want nowadays are 4 wheels and Apple CarPlay, which is meant to be like a joke about the fact that consumer preferences are changing and people are very specific about what they're looking for. When I purchased my last car, my wife said, she's like, does it have Apple CarPlay? Right? Like, it's crazy that was the first consideration that came up. It wasn't, is there enough room in the car? Are there enough seats? Does it have Apple CarPlay? And I've seen that with many customers as well. But it's really meant to just be it's really just a proxy for, can I use my phone in a frictionless way in my vehicle? So from your perspective, right, what are like 3 ways, or just if you can give us a couple ways, how are consumer preferences changing or behavior, right? What are people looking for, especially given the fact that, as Alan mentioned, you weren't selling the flashiest car out there. It was very practical, right? But what are some key ways that you're seeing consumer behavior changing that, you think is really top of mind, should be for retailers in the market?
Well, I think what's happening, I think customers assume, for example, that our cars have all of those types of features and benefits that other manufacturers have. Yeah, we have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and they expect to be able to use their phone for navigation, or they could use our navigation if they want, through the navigation that we might provide. Mm-hmm. But also, I think what's happening is because of the telematics units that's in these vehicles now, remember, we're getting a lot of information about how that car is running and how that information is how that customer is using that particular vehicle. So we can become more of service to that customer. We might know that the check engine light came on before the customer notices it. Mm-hmm. And so that gives us the opportunity to be proactive to that customer.
How so? Like, what would you do?
Well, because we would then send that information back to the retailer. The retailer then gets in contact with the customer. Hey, listen, we just noticed that your check engine light came on. Maybe there's something that we need to take a look at. Mm-hmm. Let's schedule your car for this Friday at 10 o'clock. And that way, oh, wow, the customer is kind of wowed by that. Mm-hmm. But these are the kinds of things that you can do once the customer is trusting of you. They know that you as a retailer and as a manufacturer have their best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. It's not that we're trying to get them in to try to sell them all of these other types of services that aren't necessary. No, it's because we see something in how you're driving this vehicle where we can help you, mm-hmm. and we can keep the car safe and keep it reliable and durable, and keep your investment and the most important things that are important to you, your family, safe in the car.
So Tom, you presided over this incredible rise, 200,000 units to 700,000. Was that right? Where the industry really didn't go up much at all. I think it was around we were in 16, 17 million units when you started, and 16, 17 million units when you ended, right? So that was you taking share from some pretty ferocious competitors.
That's right.
Who'd you take share from?
We took it from everybody. Really?
Yeah. Was there like a standout
No, I mean, obviously, probably more some of the
Well,
Japanese
you
manufacturers.
took a lot of share from the domestic sedan business,
We did.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and you prevented them from gaining much share in the crossover segment. I would say,
Yeah.
for a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah, with
I
the
mean,
with
you
the
weren't-
Crosstrek and with the Forester and the Outback that we bought out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that segment grew more than any other segment,
And we were
that-
positioned well to
That was
capture
your
it.
sweet spot.
That's right.
You had
Yeah.
3 or 4 vehicles that were in
That's right.
that business. But so incredible rise, and the retailers weren't really selling that many units more, but it was shifting from their Chevy store to their Subaru store, and they noticed that, right? They could see the customers coming to Subaru. They could see the salespeople going from Chevy to Subaru. They could see the techs going from Chevy to Subaru, right? They could see this, every month. It happened a little bit. But what message do you have for the retailers in the next 10 or 20 years? What opportunities are you excited about, or what threats are you worried about? And then what could a retailer do to thrive in the next 10 years?
Well, the key, as I said earlier, the key for the retailers to continue to thrive in the next, really for the foreseeable future, whatever that holds. And I can't predict the future. I'm not Nostradamus, so I don't know. But what I will say is it really is all about the customer and the customer experience. And we have to look at it from their perspective. And those brands that do that well will continue to thrive and to grow. Now, there's tools that are coming down the road that can help. I mentioned telematics. There's AI, or as they call it, AGI.
Podcast the other day that you had about AI.
Yeah. How do you think about AI as a manufacturer? Like, I get as a retailer is one thing, but as a manufacturer, how do you think about AI?
I think it can help us understanding people's driving habits. It can help us with helping them to determine when it's best for them to get service on their vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting as it relates to the new car side of it, or even the used car side, because there's so many variables that I don't know that AI can factor in all of those and tell that particular customer, you're going to buy this car with these specifications. I don't think that's going to happen. So there's always going to be a need for something.
I partially disagree, but
that's okay. If you disagree, let's discuss it.
That's what's fun about it.
Yeah. That's what makes the world go round. But the fact is, I think that if you boil it all down, we got to make sure that the customer has a good, memorable experience in a positive way.
So no matter what changes happen, and you can't predict what they're going to be, the reaction should always be what's best for the customer.
That is correct.
To be close to the customer, understand what they want or need, and fulfill that need.
That's right.
Not maybe sometimes we have some technology, EVs, et cetera, they're getting ahead of us, or subscription model and things that the customers haven't asked for.
Yeah, and the market will decide all this stuff, right? The market is speaking now as it relates to electric vehicles, right? It looks like it's going to be on a little bit longer timetable than what maybe some of the governmental experts.
It's probably good for Subaru.
Very good for Subaru.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. So I think affordability, which is a big issue in our industry.
Yes.
I would have to imagine it's not the biggest issue for a Subaru customer.
It is and it isn't. I mean, we have to.
It impacts everyone.
Impacts everybody. What I get concerned about,
but you're not selling. Well, go ahead.
Well, if it were me, I'm not in the industry anymore, so I can say my concern is that instead of the industry being 16.5 million vehicles a year, because of where the price points have elevated to, and the fact that this inflation is real out there. I mean, we all talk to customers and people that are that are trying to just get by with what it costs them for their mortgage and interest rates and gasoline prices and food and groceries and things, insurance. Right.
Some tear, yeah.
Have we permanently made the industry 15.5, 15.6, 15.7? What is it this year, Alan? 15.7, I think is the highest.
Yeah.
So last year was 15.5. So it's smart, but everybody's trying to produce cars at 17 million or 18 million vehicles.
The plants are there for that.
So the inventory is going to grow. Inventory is going to grow, create pressure. Now the manufacturers can't get the earnings and cash flow they need.
Well, do you think leasing is going to be the solution here?
I'm sorry?
Do you think vehicle leasing will be the solution to increase, new car sales?
It could be. Now, but remember, some of those manufacturers don't have good residual or resale values are going to have to subvent those lease payments. So it's going to be costly for them. So their incentive costs are going to go up. But for a brand like Subaru, I think that's a viable option for us if they decide to do that.
Yeah.
One interesting question about future sales is that the U.S. population has gone from 250 million to 320 million in about the last 12 or 15 years, but auto sales have been the same. Say, how can that be? Are people poor? No, cars are lasting longer.
Right.
Right. They're better built. They used to wear out in 70,000 miles back in the 70s, I think, right?
That's
It's only Toyota that would go over 100,000.
That's right.
But now as we move into the EV, the question is, will those vehicles become a little bit more just about Apple CarPlay? Will they roll 120, 150, 200,000 miles? Or will they not even bother to replace the battery because the car itself is not worth the cost of the battery?
Mm-hmm.
So could we enter into an era where maybe all those minerals are recycled, but sales increase because cars are not being kept as long? I don't know if that's something. I mean, I would hope that would be the benefit of retailers and maybe manufacturers. But it is interesting to see that car sales have been
they really haven't moved
for 15 years.
What is it now? The average age of a vehicle on the road today is 12.4 years or something.
Yeah, I think even more than that now. Yeah,
is it higher than that?
Yeah, it's definitely an all-time record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But before, like Talon's point, I remember it was like 7 years, 8 years, and this isn't that long ago either. This is maybe 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a function of several things. I mean, it's definitely vehicle quality has, improved. It's cheaper to fix, parts and all that. But also, if you just look at the last couple of years specifically, many people don't even want to replace their cars because it's more expensive to go out and replace it. I see this within, my own friends or immediate family, people, real anecdotes. And obviously, Twitter,
right?
The anecdote machine. I get people sending me stuff all day, but it's a real consideration. It's like, hey, I have this car, I'm in the money, or, I have equity, but if I go replace it now, my payment's going to be $150 higher per month. Do I really want to do that? It's a real issue in the industry.
Plus your insurance will go up a lot.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The insurance, it's kind of interesting because, with Subaru, when I was there anyway, we paid tremendous attention, believe me when I tell you, to our used car and our residual values. We watched it every month.
Another part of the virtuous circle.
Exactly.
Because that lowers the cost of ownership.
Yes.
Makes customers happier. It makes it better for the lender.
Right. Then to Yossi's point, if now that customer is going to go trade the car, wow, I bought this car, I'm just making up $30,000, but I'm getting 18 for it. If they've owned the car for 5 or 6 years, wow, my loan's only going to be this. I can get my payment. Yeah. I think most people expect their payment to go up, between somewhat, maybe $20, $25 a month. Just because the price of cars are going to go up at least $250 a year, right? At a minimum, right? So I think they expect some increase in payment, but when you can keep their payment relatively consistent, that's going to fit into their budget. Well, now you provided them a service. Why would they leave you?
Mm-hmm. So Tom, it was an incredible ride at Subaru. I remember I heard a story that when you opened up your new offices a few years ago, that there was a really magnificent break room, lunchroom, cafeteria with all kinds of terrific food. And you used to like to go down and sit and see your team, et cetera. But I was told that because you were so popular at the company, that when you sat, you weren't able to eat because people kept on coming up and talking to you. So instead, when you needed nutrition, you stayed in your office and you ate a lot of tuna sandwiches. Is that true?
How did you know that?
He does his research.
This is my job to gain information.
There's somebody on the inside. That's true. And the reason I did that was because, well, first off, as you move up within the organization, there's so much demands on your time.
Yeah.
And you just need to have like a half an hour or so to yourself just to kind of debrief. But it also actually freed me up a bit too, because then I could walk around a little bit more and speak with people. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really enjoyed that part of it. I mean, it is really all about the people. The people make it. And that's what I miss the most about it, right? Is the people.
And I think there was this very special person who wasn't inside the company, but was hoping to get more of your time. And that's your wife. And and now that you are no longer having to hide from your team and grab a tuna sandwich quickly upstairs in the office, tell me how you're spending your time.
It's interesting. My days are full. It's really interesting. Like I always thought, I thought, geez, when I retire, what am I going to do all day? All I did was work. I would get up at 5:15, 5:30 every morning, take a quick shower, get something real quick to eat. I'd typically be on the road by 6 o'clock, 6:10, at my office by, 6:40, 6:45, something like that. And then wouldn't come home until after 7 o'clock at night most of the time. And so my wife got used to me not being there. And actually, she was pushing me really to be truth be told, from around 2020, hey, it's time to kind of slow down a little bit.
So, is there anything you didn't get accomplished? I know you wanted to get to the 800,000 or so, but anything else?
That was
that was just
yeah.
right?
Once we got to 500,000 sales,
I'm looking up who interviewed me at Subaru, by the way. I'm pulling up emails from 2013 right now.
Okay. But
you can do that on your phone. You have that much storage. Huh?
But I set the target out there that I wanted to get to 5% market share, or somewhere at 16.5 million vehicles or 17 million vehicles. That would equate to somewhere between 800 and 850,000 vehicle sales. Mm-hmm. That was my ultimate goal, which we didn't get to. Mm-hmm. But I'll leave that for the next.
They have to be able to accomplish something on their own.
They will. Yeah. Believe me, they're doing a great job.
How about any last suggestions for retailers out there that are maybe not owners of stores, but they're working in a dealership a retailer, and they want to achieve that ultimate objective, perhaps, of owning their own retail location? What advice would you have for him or her?
Obviously, learn the business. Don't take any shortcuts. You've got to, I think in the past, at Subaru, we look to try to take the shortcut approach, but it doesn't work. You're building something for the long term. It has to be sustainable. It has to be able to stand the test of time. It has to have values and traditions. You're not going to be able to do that if you're cutting corners. So understand that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. There's going to be some years where you're going to question that, but overall, you're going to be much more consistent. You're going to be much happier. You're going to build your brand actually faster that way, I believe.
Okay.
Look what happened to Subaru. We were nothing. Go back to 2006, 2007. This was a nothing little brand. I'm telling you. And now look at it. So once you get it moving and people start buying in, it just takes off on its own.
Well, Tom, this has been awesome. Alan, amazing. Thank you for the intro. This was really great. And we're gonna have to, keep chatting and get your thoughts on where this industry is heading, because there's definitely gonna be a lot of change. So I appreciate you coming on.
For you two guys, anytime.
Come on, man.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks, Yoshi.
This episode is brought to you by my very own Car Dealership Guy News. CDG News is here to help you stay updated on all things automotive. We're not your typical news crew. We're bringing you concise, unbiased car industry news in easy to digest formats. From the hottest headlines to podcast summaries, dealership best practices, and industry insights, we've got it all covered. And guess what? It's all free, no paywalls, just like we always promise. Hop over to cdg.news, that's cdg.news, and check us out. We're all ears for your feedback. Tell us what you need. Give us your honest thoughts. We're here to deliver real value. So don't wait. Head to cdg.news now or click the link in the show notes below.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.